Well, well, well. A new victim wants to learn some 3D and doesn't realize that AI is ruling the world. You think this will be an easy ride, right? Because you already downloaded my starter pack. Fine, then tell me, which pillar is the bigger one? Ah, sweet, you're not sure, huh? Fine, I'll tell you. It all depends on perspective. Try pressing the middle mouse button to move the camera. As you can see, this pillar looks much smaller, but it's just closer. You can also watch what I do here. You can also hold Shift and the middle mouse button while moving the mouse to pan the camera instead of rotating it. Now, let's try to zoom toward this pillar here. I scroll a lot, but not much happens. Yes, scrolling out is fast, but scrolling in does nothing. That's because Blender focuses on an object and moves the camera to match it. How do I focus on an object? First, select it. Just click it with the left mouse button. It has an orange outline now. Then press the dot on the numpad. Now you can rotate the camera around it. Suddenly zooming works, and I can zoom in very far. If I select this one and press numpad dot, the camera jumps to it. I can also select both using a box select. Just click in empty space, drag a box around them, and press numpad dot. Now both are focused. Blender centers the camera between them. To keep both in view, that's quite useful. If box select doesn't work, press T to open the menu here, then choose box select here. Hold the left mouse button here and select box select from the menu. It won't work with the tweak tool. Only box select works for this. Fine, now you're wondering, no matter how I look at it, how can I be sure which pillar is actually larger? Because as soon as I zoom closer again, the doubt comes back, right? For that, we use orthographic views. You'll find it here at the top right. This is the newest way to do it. Let's press X here. Now you can see it clearly. If you only see one pillar, zoom out a bit. Notice there are no more depth cues. That's what the orthographic view does. It removes the sense of depth. Everything looks flat now, like a 2D floor plan of a house or similar. Press Y to see the side view and Z for the top view. Pretty straightforward. But we don't even need these buttons. You can also use the numpad keys 1, 3, or 7. Or just do it my way. Hold Alt. Then use the middle mouse button to rotate toward your desired view direction. For example, to the left, or to the right, or downward. Just hold Alt and use the middle mouse button. I find this quite intuitive. As soon as you rotate the camera normally with the middle mouse button again, you leave orthographic mode. That covers this scene and the navigation. Don't forget to take a break and go through the learned stuff in mind. We'll move to the second scene now. But first, let's go through some basic Blender settings. Go to Edit, then Preferences here. Under Interface, you can adjust the UI size. And also the line thickness if you want to. I'll leave it as is for this tutorial. You can make it smaller if you prefer, but to make sure you see everything, I'll keep these settings. Now scroll down to the Themes section, select 3D Viewport here, click on it once, scroll down far until you see Face Orientation Back. Click on that colour box and lower its alpha a bit, for example to 0.4. Leave everything else as is. If you use an older version of Blender, you'll also need to set the alpha for face orientation front to 0 here. What does this do? In short, every face has two sides, a front side and a back side. We can turn face orientation on here. Now we can see what happens if this cube has a hole there. Now you see the back faces of the cube. This is important for beginners. Beginners often don't notice when they flip a face inside out. This can really cause problems later on. That's why I always recommend working with face orientation enabled. And so it doesn't hurt your eyes too much. Now go to the Key Config tab here. Of course, that's up to you. Let's search for Redo at the top here. In Blender, Redo is bound to Shift plus Control plus Z. Some people prefer Control plus Y instead. Now, under System, let's adjust a few settings. First, memory limits and undo steps. Let's set them to the maximum. Click and drag left or right until it reaches 256. Yes, this uses a bit more memory, but trust me, beginners often need more than 32 undo steps. If you have a graphics card, which I hope for when modelling, you can enable CUDA or optics here. If you have an NVIDIA card, or HIP, if you use an AMD card, then select your GPU. You might think it's smarter to also enable the CPU, but it usually slows down the GPU. The GPU alone is usually faster. So just leave it as is. It's like waiting for a person without arms to hand you something on a conveyor belt. It doesn't add up on speed. You can also enable Allow Online Access here if you want. Some add-ons need it. Fine, that's it. Click Save User Preferences here, then close the window. Now we can get back to the actual tutorial. All right, now the real fun begins. As you can see in the Starter Pack folder, there aren't even two separate files. You can actually keep multiple scenes in one Blender file. Let's switch to the second scene. Click here at the top and choose 002 Move Grab. Now you see nothing. This happens often, so let's just press A. A selects everything in the scene. Then press Focus, which is the dot on the numpad you already learned. And now the camera centers on this object. Do this whenever you're lost in the scene. Just select something in the outliner or press A, then press the focus key. Now press Z for a top-down view, or as I said, you can use numpad 7. Now we'll learn how to move things. Quick question for you. What do you think is the key to moving objects in Blender? The key choice here is actually quite intuitive. Just think of the English word for it. But here it's a bit tricky. Let me give you a small hint. Is it M for move, G for grab, or T for transform? It can't be T, because just like we saw earlier, pressing T opens the handy menu here. We can leave it open for a sec. It's not M either. Pressing M opens Move to Collection. So it does move things in the outliner, but nothing in the viewport. So it has to be G. Nothing happens right now though, but I haven't selected anything yet. Let's start with this corner piece. That's how puzzles usually begin. I press G and move my mouse, and it follows along. It snaps to the grid I set up for you. That only works here for now to make sure the puzzle looks right at the end. Now, place the pieces where they belong. Keep in mind, it doesn't matter where your mouse is. As long as a piece is selected, I can press G and drag it anywhere. But now you see, it doesn't snap anywhere useful. It just follows the cursor. Here it snaps to nothing. But over this crosshair, suddenly it snaps perfectly. Don't be surprised. Instead of using the G key for grab, you can also just click and drag directly. This gives you the so-called gizmo. Click on these faces here to move along two axes at once, X and Y. You can see the colours guiding you. Now it's your turn to solve the puzzle. Don't forget, scroll wheel to zoom in closer. All right, I'm done. Hope you are too. This repetition should help you learn the basics. Now, who is this here? It's me, as a low-poly character from my other channel, Agent Rage SD. It's a German channel, and Agent Rage isn't very happy. His apartment is pretty broken and messy. In this tutorial, we'll build a brand new house for Agent Rage. With that section done, let's go to 003 Rotate and Scale at the top. Don't forget to take a break and go through the learned stuff in mind. All right, what do we see here? No, that's not something everyone has down below. This is a tree stump. If you rotate the camera, you'll also spot a trunk and two branches. Now I want you to build a tree out of these pieces. I'll show you how I'd start. First, switch to top view and drag this trunk here. Then I'll move to side view and slide it upward. That actually went pretty well. You can always tweak it, but it will never be perfectly seamless this way. There will always be some overlapping edges somewhere. But we can fix that with snapping, just like we did with the puzzle earlier. Let's undo the mistake first. Press Ctrl and Z to put the piece back where it started. Now, let's look at manual snapping. Depending on your settings, the object will snap to the grid. I do this by pressing G to grab, then holding Ctrl while dragging. You can also apply it afterward. Drag toward the spot first, then hold Ctrl. The further your camera is from the grid, the coarser the alignment. If I'm far away, it snaps on meters. If I come closer, it snaps to decimeters. If I am very close, it snaps to centimeters and so on. Closer camera equals finer precision. I'll switch back to side view and do the same upward. I drag it into position, hold Ctrl to snap. And now it sits perfectly on top. If this didn't work for you, or if you just want to learn more about snapping, it's actually a pretty deep topic, scan the QR code now. It takes you straight to a dedicated Snapping Deep Dive video. You'll also find the link in the description below. Why an extra video instead of explaining it right here? I hear you asking. Beginners often struggle with snapping mechanics. A separate video lets you dive straight into the details without clicking through hours of unrelated tutorial footage later. From now on, I'll handle complex topics like this the same way. If a trick or method deserves a deeper explanation, I'll link it. You can explore further at your own pace or skip it to save time. My goal is always to keep these tutorials valuable for both beginners and pros. But if you're completely stuck here, you can also snap this object directly to the 3D cursor. Every scene has exactly one. If you haven't moved it yet, you can easily move your object to it using Shift plus S. Hold Shift so the menu stays open, then choose Selection to Cursor. Pretty self-explanatory. The piece is selected, so we move it to the cursor. You could do Cursor to Selection too, but that's not what we want right now. So, Selection to Cursor. And just like that, it snaps into place. If you accidentally moved your cursor and are now totally lost, well, guess which video you should watch. So, we can do the same with the branches now. I select this branch, switch to this view and move it here. Now, I want this branch to point in this direction. How do I do that? As I've said before, Blender is pretty intuitive. Press R to rotate something. Pressing R lets me rotate the part. But be careful, it might be sensitive depending on where the mouse is. I'd recommend keeping the mouse farther from this orange point, the centre, so it's less sensitive. Otherwise, you can activate it here and rotate it that way. Then switch to this view and push it into the tree. It doesn't need to look perfect. I mean, this is a low poly tree. For this branch, press G to move it here again, then R to rotate. Better to rotate it a bit up, because branches usually go to the sun and are pushed up from the lower branches. And from this side, place it here. Now we have a very sad looking tree. It's missing a few branches. So we should add more. But how do I duplicate these branches? You can probably guess. D for duplicate. That's correct. But pressing D alone does nothing. We can duplicate it with Shift plus D. Now it's moving. We can also press R to rotate it directly. Alternatively, depending on the view, right-click to stop the transforming. The object stays, it's here, but only the transforming stops. Then use your usual workflow and move it up here and rotate it better. And of course, if we can rotate it with R, we can also scale it with S. So duplicate with Shift plus D, rotate with R, move/grab with G, and scale with S. That's how I do it. Repeat this a few times until the tree looks decent. Quick tip, Blender rotates based on the camera perspective. To rotate around the ZD axis, the camera should be in top orthographic view. For Y-axis, in front orthographic view, etc. But you can also rotate in 3D perspective. Press R, then Z while rotating. Now it rotates only around Z, same for X and Y. It also works for move and scale too. This tree isn't competing in beauty contests, but it's good enough for now. Of course, you can spend more time on it, but for this tutorial it's enough. We can adjust it any time. By the way, this is a pro tip to save you time later. Before placing modular objects like this, I'll select the whole tree with Box Select. Be careful not to include the ground. Then copy it with Shift D and move it here. Finally, I'll click this stump base at the bottom with holding Shift. Press Ctrl+J to join. You see, J like join. Now it's one object. I can't move the branches independent anymore. Why I clicked the stump? I selected it at the end. So the origin, the orange point at the bottom, is the pivot for rotation and scale. Always the last selected object gives the origin. This matters more for a tree than if it were at the top. Now I have a tree and I can quickly vary another. Do it again and I'll have many trees, but for now I only need one. In the outliner you can rename your objects. I double-click and name it like 01A. The number is for a complete new tree, when I make a completely new of a different type. For example, beech, spruce, oak. The letter changes when I vary this current type, like moving the branches or flip textures to make this one a dead tree. For example, some apps like Unreal or Unity increases the number of every copy of the object, and so your tree 01 becomes tree 02. So it looks like a complete different tree type in the outliner, but with this trick it will just become tree 01A01 and then tree 01A02 and so on. This tree is done. I copy it to the clipboard with Ctrl+C to move it to another scene. If I do Shift D, it won't work because it doesn't copy to clipboard. So we switch to scene 004 editing. Now things get interesting. Now you are able to navigate, kit bash templates and transform them. In the next part you will learn how to edit a mesh by building a house. After that, you are able to create your own models. Thanks for watching.